Hi, cookie friends. Welcome back to Late's Camera Cookies. Thank you so much for joining me on this very thorough step-by-step tutorial of some adorably cute jungle animals. So, this cookie I'm going to start with is the zebra. And this was actually a unicorn cookie cutter that I cut the horn off right before I baked. So I rolled out the cookie dough and then I sliced the horn right off with a butter knife, and it left me with this cute little shape for a zebra. So I took my white glaze icing. So I use a glaze icing as opposed to a royal icing. Why? Because I prefer the taste better. I made my barrier line or my flood barrier, and I outlined the first top of that zebra's face. I let it sit for 30 seconds, came right back in with the same consistency glaze icing. So here's the thing, sometimes I use a really stiff barrier for my outline, and then I come in with a thinner flood, but this time I use the same consistency. I try to use the same consistency as much as I can because it is less work. And you're gonna see I'm gonna start to flood this cookie. My piping bag is tipless. I do prefer a tipless piping bag rather than using one of those, tips. I find that it's easier to manipulate the icing, and I am just going back and forth almost like a printer. That's I always think of that, like I'm printing out this image. Go back and forth slow, and sometimes when I do my videos and I speed these up by 20 or 50 times, it's kind of deceiving how slow it actually takes. So this is my scribe tool. How cute is that? Got it from Etsy. I use this when I'm done filling in my area to just pop any bubbles or, push any icing together that was a little bit separated. I let that dry for about 15 minutes just so it crusted over nicely. And I came in with my gray icing, did the same thing. I used my flood barrier, and I came right back in and started to flood the cookie with my tipless bag. A quick note about gray. Sometimes when you dye gray icing, I use a little bit of black. Sometimes it actually comes out looking purple. One of the ways that you can counter this is to add the tiniest bit of yellow. So add the opposite color on the color wheel. And so what I'm saying is the opposite of purple is yellow. So since it had a purple tinge to it, I added a little bit of yellow and I removed that purple, and I got this really perfect gray. This was the gray that I was going for. And I make my holes in my piping bag as small as possible, because that also reduces the amount of air bubbles. So a full 24 hours later, I waited 24 hours for this to fully dry. I came in with a thicker consistency black icing. And you could do any number of designs here, but I wanted to give him a little bit of hair. I could have done just straight lines. I chose to do this little design for him, and I think it came out really cute. All right, and now what we have next is I wanted to give little eyes, so I chose just little beady eyes. I thought that they were adorable. So these cookies were actually for a birthday party for a little kid, and I thought that this was really cute. I chose to also give eyebrows. They were the cutest little eyebrows, just gave him a little bit of personality. We've got his nose going on here, and the cutest little mouth. And you can choose, you have complete creative freedom here to put whatever face you'd like on, but this is the face that I chose. I also, of course, the zebra needs stripes, so I came back in and really carefully added some stripes. So one thing that can happen here, especially when you put black on top of a white glaze icing, you can have color bleed, and that means that the black starts to actually bleed into the white icing. It can be a little bit frustrating. So one way to counter this is to make your black icing overnight and have it completely set, rather than just making a fresh black icing and then putting it on white. Another way to counter this is have it a little bit thicker, which is why I chose to make a thick black consistency icing here to try to help prevent the color bleed. Also, you don't have to oversaturate your black icing. You don't have to dump all of the gel food coloring in there. If you put a little bit in, let it set, it does darken overnight. The last step here, I put in a really pale pink for the inside of the zebra's ears, and this guy is all done. I think he came out really cute. All right, and there's the finished product. I love him. All right, so the next one that we're on to is our elephant. So I have gone through so many elephant cookie cutters to try to find the best one. I'll link this one in the description. I thought that his chunk wasn't as long or brittle as other ones that I've used. I'm using my edible ink marker. These markers are completely safe. They're actually just made with food coloring, but it comes out through a pen. And I wanted to outline how I envisioned the icing going on for this elephant. I didn't want to just flood the entire cookie. I wanted to have separate parts, which is why I'm taking the time to do this. I also dotted it out. I just think that it's a little bit more efficient for me rather than drawing, a full straight line. All right, so here we go. I've got my gray icing, which, if you remember, turned out a little bit purple, so I added some yellow into it to get the perfect gray that I wanted. And I'm just going to do my flood outline right exactly where I dotted out the layout for this elephant. So the first thing I did was outline his face and trunk area, and I'm going to come in and outline his ears, because I'm doing every flood piece separately. And I want to make sure I outline that section because that middle part will be filled with pink for his ears. And again, I didn't use any different consistencies. This consistency that I am outlining my cookie with is the same exact consistency that I'm flooding my cookie with. Why? Like I said, it is just less work. If you can get that right, perfect consistency, you just have a little bit less work on your part. So now I'm going to come in and flood the cookie. So I'm going to flood the ears first. And really take your time, fill in all those holes. My bag, like I said, has a smaller tip. I cut out a smaller tip to prevent any bubbles that might come in under my icing. All right, and now it's time to flood in the bigger part. Usually what I do is I do like a second barrier flood. So this is a second barrier outline. So this is a thicker outline. And then I just come in and I flood it. Same motion, back and forth, just like a printer. This part is super satisfying for me when I decorate cookies. This is my favorite part. And I also love watching it. All right, so that came out pretty nice. All right, so now I let this dry. I chose to let this dry for a full 24 hours before I went on to my next step. And my next step here is to add the pink for his ears. So I just came right in and I filled that. I wasn't worried about icing color bleed. Because this did set for 24 hours and this pink was so light, I wasn't worried about anything bleeding into the next color. All right, so I've got my pink there, and it wasn't as perfect as I wanted it to be, so I came in with my scribe tool just to smooth it out, just to push that pink all the way to that flood line that I first made, that barrier line. And also was a good opportunity to make sure I was popping any bubbles or smoothing anything out so nothing cratered. I also gave it a bit of a tap because that helps to even out the icing. Okay, so same thing like I did for the zebra. I took my thicker black glaze icing and I chose a different hairdo for this guy. I just made 3 lines. I thought it was cute. Again, you can do any design that you think would be adorable for your animals. I gave the little black beady eyes again. And I also chose to give him some little eyebrows. How cute is that? Okay, so then I wanted to make sure that you all knew this was a trunk, so I put the little wrinkle lines on the trunk. Now you could do this with an icing, you could do this with those edible ink markers, you could do this with gel food coloring diluted with some vodka. I chose to use the icing. All right, and there he is. I think he came out really, really cute. All right, on to the next one. Here we have the giraffe. So this giraffe is actually, the cookie cutter came as part of a Christmas set that I had. It is actually a reindeer cookie cutter. And I thought, you know what, why go out and buy a giraffe cookie cutter when I've got a perfectly good choice here? So, all right, I'm starting with my edible ink markers again, just to give me the outline, just to let me know where I'm gonna place my glaze icing. So I'm gonna start with my yellow glaze and start to outline like I've done the past two cookies. So just carefully put in that flood barrier. You do want to use this flood barrier. I mean, you could go in and just start to fill in the cookie, but this does help prevent that icing from spilling over the sides. All right, let's give him, what do you call that on a giraffe? I always say antennas. I don't think they're called antennas on a giraffe. I don't know, can someone let me know what the little horn antennas are on a giraffe? They're not antennas. All right, so then I cut the tip of my bag a little bit to make a bigger hole, and I started to do that second thicker barrier line. All right, and then I'm going to start to go back and forth in that printer motion, and I'm going to fill in the rest of this cookie, or flood it. And you see, like, I'm pushing the icing with the piping bag, so you can do that. You can also use your scribe tool and you can push it with that. I have learned to just try to do less work. So if I can push it along with my piping bag, I will. All right, so I'm going to do the brown part of the giraffe right now. Same thing as per usual. I'm going to do that outline and then come in and flood it. This was a really good consistency icing. Sometimes, for as many cookies as I have made, sometimes I still get the consistency wrong. This was a perfect consistency for me. It was not too runny. It was not too thick. My hands were not turning blue when I was trying to get the icing out of the piping bag. So this was a really good consistency. And again, no scribe tool here. I'm just pushing that icing along to meet the barrier line that I made. All right, so far so good. I'm gonna put that little antenna topper on top of the giraffe's little horns up there. And I decided to give him some little spiky brown hair just for some personality and for some fun. I thought that was cute. So now I'm going to put those little spots that are on giraffes. Now I could have done this with my marker, like I said. I could have done it with my gel food coloring diluted with vodka. I chose to do it with the glaze icing. I do like some like raised dimension or texture, so that's why I chose to do it that way. And the spots don't have to be in any particular order. There is no real solid pattern here for giraffes, so why would I do that on a cookie? I wanted to make it look as realistically fun as possible. So I came in with that same pink icing that I used for the other two animal ears. And then of course this guy needs some little beady eyes as well, so I'm going to use that same black icing and pipe that on. One trick also with black icing, if you're worried about the consistency and getting it a little bit thicker, I also add some Crisco to my icing. It almost makes like a buttercream. I promise you that it dries hard. It will not smudge or, squish like buttercream might. So that's another way to harden your glaze icing and still allow it to come out of the bag easier. So glaze icing, while it tastes really good, sometimes it does get a little bit more difficult to work with. So I do use some Crisco in there. So you're going to see here that I decided to not use my icing for the eyebrows and I wanted to use my edible ink marker. Well, that was a mistake because even though I let that yellow dry for 24 hours, the marker was a little bit too hard for the icing still, and it went right through, and it came out a little bit messier than I had wanted. Regardless of that, I kept going, made a few more brown dots on the giraffe, and I think he came out pretty good. I am pretty happy with him. Well, maybe I lied. I was not happy with it. So those eyebrows were really upsetting me, so I came back in with my glaze icing and fixed it. So now he looks clean. Just remember when you are making cookies, a whole bunch of things can happen, and the idea is how do you fix it. So what I'm pointing out here is the pink. When I put that in, it actually cratered. Do you see that hole right there? So all I did was take a little bit of pink icing, squeeze it out, put it on my scribe tool, and I just filled in the hole. Almost like you're caulking something or you're patching a hole in the wall. There's always ways to fix things, so do not get discouraged if something like this happens. I promise you there is a way to fix it. So between the eyebrows and between the little hole in the ears, it was all figured out, and look at how great this guy came out. I am very happy with him. All right, so on to the last one of the set. This is the lion. This was not a lion cookie cutter. This is just a scalloped circle cookie cutter that I looked at and I'm like, hey, that could be a pretty cool lion. So one of my challenges for all of you, if you don't always have to have the cookie cutter. You can use your imagination and see what cookie cutters you have and what could they turn into, especially shapes like this, especially these regular old shapes, circles, squares, rectangles. What can you make them into? So like I did for the last ones, I outlined it in my yellow glaze icing and I came back in and flooded it with the same consistency icing. And I let that dry for about an hour just until it crusts over. Crusting over just means that it gets a little bit harder. You could still put your finger right through it, so don't touch it, but it has a nice crust on it. And I outlined his mane in that brown glaze icing. This scallop cookie cutter, by the way, is one of my favorites to make. I love filling in the scalloped part. I don't know why, it's really satisfying to me. And when you're doing this, just take your time. Like I said before, sometimes when you watch cookie decorating on Instagram or TikTok, you see how fast it goes. That's because I'm speeding it up. I'm speeding it up by almost 20 times the normal speed that it would be. So this is what it's really like to decorate a cookie in real time. It does require patience and some pretty good hand strength. All right, so I will just speed this process up for you a little bit. That's 4 times the speed. There we go. All right, so now this cookie's all set. I let it dry for a full 24 hours. You don't have to necessarily let it dry for 24 hours. You could take a chance and do it a few hours later. Just know that the icing will not be super hard. There is a chance of icing color bleed. Another thing you can do is purchase a dehydrator, and you could put your cookies into a dehydrator. I do not do that. I don't know how that exactly works, but that is an option. So I put my glaze icing right on top of that brown to make the little ears for the lion. So I think that came out pretty cute. And of course we need those little beady eyes to finish out the set. All right, there's one, and number 2's coming right in. And I decided to give him a rather large nose. I thought that was cute. Another tip that I can give is try to use your same colors. If you're looking for easy cookie decorating, I use that same exact color brown that I used for his mane. It just helps be smart about the colors you're using and when you use them, and try to make the process as easy for yourself that you want it to be as possible. There's his eyebrows, no edible ink marker there this time. And I gave him his little smirk. Yeah, I think he came out really, really cute. All right, and here's a look at the whole set. Again, these were easy beginner type cookies, no stress, easy fills, easy outline, same consistency icing. Use your edible ink markers when you need to. Try to make it as easy for yourself as possible, or as easy as you want it to be for yourself. Of course, we could have kicked these up a notch. We could have painted them. We could have added more layers. We could have done crazy things to it. But sometimes the simple cookies are some of the nicest. And I really hope that you have enjoyed watching this, and I hope you give it a try. Let me know if you do, and let me know if you have any questions. Please drop them right in the comments below, and I will be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Have a great day, everybody. Bye, cookie friends.